Well. It's Thursday of all days, I guess. We are here to discuss none other than the Senate bill, which I guess was unanimously passed, being that everyone who showed up to vote voted for it, right, Adam?
Yeah, it's certainly looks to be sailing to a relatively smooth passage through the House. So we thought, with all of the undue consternation and unwarranted Twitter meltdowns on some theoretically Trump pro-Trump accounts on the bill's content, and the media's masterful job of not covering what is actually in the bill, and the nation that people have about an 883-page bill, which I assure you is quite minuscule for the content of the bill and the amount that the bill actually sets into motion as far as government expenditures. And we're talking about an excess of $2 trillion here, which is more than half of what we spend in a total year, and it's more than non-discretionary funding that we do in a fiscal year. So it's an impressive amount of money, and it's done in a relatively concise 883 pages. It is written in a way that even someone with minimal experience with legislation or experience in government and or just having to, I don't know, basically having two brain cells rub together. I don't want to really, go too hard on anybody that doesn't understand legislation, because it's the way it's written is the way it's always been written. It's you can read it. It's quite similar to being reading Braille and not being able to read Braille, because if you can't read Braille, it's just a bunch of bumps on a paper, and you don't know what the hell is going on. And it's the same way with legislation. You have to understand existing statutory language that's being amended, struck, or included, and when it's included, when it's the insertions of words like shall versus may. These make all the difference in a piece of legislation. And then, of course, my favorite is the fact that this is a what you would call a temporary construct as far as legislation is concerned, because it's every almost every component of this bill, 90% of this bill, expires at year's end, and some of the really important parts expire in June. So it is meant solely to be under this administration's control. The administration and the United States Senate was not about to set into motion anything with permanency that would allow a worst case scenario of a Chuck Schumer majority leader or President Biden working off a bill that they passed. So whatever you hate is going to expire in short order. Chris from Wisconsin says BS is the Vaseline of social intercourse. In this case, we'll say social discourse. Yes, I believe that is correct. And thank you for the $5 super chat. Always appreciated. Always try to water a dying flower is what I've always said. So 883 pages sound sounds like War and Peace to a lot of people. To me, I've not only been reading bills for, I don't know, 25 years. I think I drafted my first legislation or piece of legislation when I was 21, 22, working in a district office. You got to understand certain things about it. And it took me a while to learn it as well. It's a secret language all on its own. Staffers drive the bus on this stuff. So, as a staffer, eventually working for 7 years as an analyst and a whatever you want to call it, legislative analyst or policy analyst for the the state house in Pennsylvania, I drafted, I don't even know how many, probably several hundred pieces of legislation, and that includes acts that were freestanding, and freestanding act is something that doesn't change existing statute or code. I've most of my experience comes from drafting bills to existing code, and then I've done probably, I don't know how many amendments to bills that were drafted by other people. So I mean, it just becomes second nature, almost like computer code is to you. It confused the hell out of a lot of people, including myself. Reading a bill that's 883 pages, but written like this and drafted in the form that it was, I got through it in maybe 20, 25 minutes. And it's because you can just skip what's already the existing statute, and you look for the insertions of new language, and you go through all the subsections, and you can basically stop reading what you already know what it is and cut to the parts that you don't. So we discussed this, and I don't want to discuss it again too much, but Nancy Pelosi came into town Saturday night, found out they were 90% of the way done with this bill. On Sunday, she introduces a bill of bad ideas. Every bill and every committee that was bullshit, that was pipe dream, crack addict style stuff the Democrats want, she put it all into one bill. And then I started leaking out onto the internet. People were taking the passages of the bill. They were saying, this is what the Democrats are putting in the bill. Well, of course, none of that was true. None of it, literally none of it. None of it that she put out in that 1,400 page bill made it. Not one line of that is in the Senate bill that came out. Then Pelosi had a press conference today where she asserted the fact that they've taken the Senate's original product, which she basically kicks Chuck Schumer right in the balls because they were 90% of the way done with this deal. And she says they changed the entire bill over that 48-hour period in order to make it a bill for workers instead of a bailout for corporations, which not only is it completely false, Mitch kind of chuckles at it because he really doesn't care. He got what he wanted. McCarthy took great exception to it because McCarthy is our leader of the GOP caucus. He was in the meetings. He was incredulous that she would say this, and he literally said she changed nothing. The bill was absolutely fundamentally not changed at all from her intervention. All it was delayed. Now, granted, they changed some of the discretionary powers that Secretary Mnuchin will have as far as giving money to corporations with more than 500 employees. They extended the time that I believe the only thing that's not sunsetted by December of this year is some of the unemployment insurance benefit stuff that is extended and can be extended up to 4 years or something like that. Really a minimal part of the bill. And then, of course, everybody's hot and heavy over what they call pork. Well, I'm not really sure everybody understands what pork is. Pork is generally a term that is assigned to pet projects that are given to legislators that gets them to vote for the bill. And those projects are typically, build a post office in their hometown, or a big capital grant to a company in their district, or some horse shit like that. There's no pork in the bill, other than if you consider the one-time lump sums that we're dumping into public radio, NPR, and public television, PBS. That chunk of money is there, and of course, that's pretty hard to say that's one particular constituency, other than just a liberal kind of a wish list. The Kennedy Arts Center gets 25 million, and originally they wanted like 3 times that. We cut that back down to size. 25 million. It was going to happen anyway in the next spending bill that we finally passed. And the other one was what was the other one? Some museum. I don't know, whatever that foundation is, a museum, an arts museum, or whatever, whatever of the living arts crap. They got like 70 or 60 million dollars, which is the drop of piss in the bucket when you're talking about a 2.2 trillion dollar bill. So I mean, I just went through and kind of like earmarked what I thought was something that could be construed as completely unnecessary expenditures in this bill, and I was very generous with that term, and I came up with less than 10% of the one and whatever percentage $1 trillion bill is actually could be considered pork in the loosest sense. So I am just shocked at the amount of ignorance that's flying around Twitter, assuming that this is a bad bill. I cannot articulate enough that this bill is very tight on the purse strings with these corporations and the airlines and everybody. It's pretty loose in the small business side, but that's okay. We want to support small business. There's a lot of hullabaloo about this extra $600 that they claim people will be making more money to stay unemployed than go back to work. And that was the provision that Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham flipped out about really late, Ben Sass. Well, listen, first of all, I've got two problems with them flipping out about it. One is $600 figure is because every state law on unemployment is different. So what they were trying to do is find a median average of point of affectation to somebody who is unemployed. Once you're talking about the base salary, trying to make them whole, that's not even for somebody who works in Manhattan and somebody who works like in a broke down, busted ass diner somewhere in Kansas. So what they did was they found the number in the middle, which was 600, but that sunsets. That's pretty much done in June. So who is going to sit on their ass and not go to work for the chance to get an extra $600? And that would mean just people in certain parts of the country that would be more money than what they make. Otherwise, 70% of the country, this doesn't apply to at all. So I thought it was a little bit of an overkill moment for the senators. The House, Chris, that's simple. The House will do a voice vote, and they may do a roll call, which could quickly turn into a disaster. But it's going through the House. We've already agreed to the deal with all parties concerned. So much easier to read questions when they light up, highlighted like that. YouTube is got some genius programmers, I guess. So we thank you for that question, Chris, and to the super chat. Additional question here from Philag. Any truth to the $25 million raised? I'm glad you asked. Raised for members of Congress? Absolutely not. There is a historical set of precedents of what must occur for a congressional pay raise, and it must be in its own bill. It cannot be a rider clause. You have to put it up in front of the American people. What the $25 million in the bill puts into effect is to pay telework contractors and other IT supposition costs, because basically the Congress went into shelter in place, work from home. That just doesn't happen on its own. And the fact that, even Glenn will remark to you, when you're talking about something enormous like Congress, the fact that there's only $25 million, even if it's only for a 4-month period, that doesn't get you very far when you're trying to ramp up a brand new telework system and software and support and all of that stuff. 25 million is a drop of piss in the IT world bucket when it comes to that type of operation.
The thing is, a lot of people don't understand. One thing I don't understand is how to get rid of my own voice in my ear. There we go. Much better. What people don't understand is whenever
I could tell you were working on something. I didn't know what it was.
Well, I installed a new camera. And I think it really makes a difference. For one, when I lean in now, you notice
you've got no bright spot on your head anymore.
Well, I do, but you can't see through it anymore. The camera is.
I don't see it.
So I'm going to try to get you one of these cameras.
Okay, all right there. When you lean way in, is the only way you can even see that.
And you notice my hands aren't see-through now either, and the refresh rate's amazing. So that's the thing, that the cameras that are built into these things, these laptops and computers, are just not. They're not top notch.
No, yeah, definitely not when you're moving around or gesticulating, or you don't have your green screen completely perfect, situated the appropriate amount of distance away from you. Certainly, I agree with you on that.
Who knows? Maybe if someone gives us a big super chat, I'll buy this thing for you. It's I actually, even if I wanted to buy it for you myself, there's nowhere to find it. I literally found the last people. People are binge buying all sorts of things, not just toilet paper and Lysol, which um, you know, whatever. But
Yeah, buying that stuff.
apparently, these high-end live streaming cameras, especially the Razer one, just are gone, and they just happen to have one at my local Walmart in Shittsville, like in the entire country, man. The entire country are out, but they had one left at the local Walmart. Because who's really live streaming out here other than me and possibly me and me? But to your point, most of the startup costs when you're doing any kind of technology thing or any kind of business, this is something we tried to explain to the dotards when we were spinning up MAGA Coalition, that the first 3 to 6 months, we spent the lion's share of the money we had in the bank to set up. That's the setup cost for the organization. And then the idea is once you've built the thing, then there's a monthly maintenance associated with it. And if you're not bringing in enough money every month, then it's a slow bleed toward oblivion. In our case, we lasted 3 years, which was not bad. But on my government contracts, it's even more of a steep hockey stick setting these things up, because not only is it the standard fare when you're setting up a new project, but there's like always double the number of stakeholders. Twice the timeline to get anything decided is always at least 50 to 60% longer. In the business world, if somebody is holding up the project, there's a dollar amount associated with it, and they get immediate they get immediate reaction when it comes to bonuses, when it comes to promotion. It's immediate. In the government world, that's not true. So you're literally trying to herd cats for 6 to 9 months, trying to get just the basic requirements nailed down. I mean, on a non-government contract, you're talking about, let's say, a $50 million system. It's a 2 to 3 month process to define the requirements and then try to get sign off. On the government one, I think we were going for a good 6 to 8 months, because everybody has an opinion that counts, and it takes a long time. And so when you're talking about government money, first of all, most people don't know what it's like to run a big project. I mean, you're complaining at the top of the show about people don't know how to read these bills, which is no doubt true, because we don't have any government experience whatsoever, what to speak of yours, where you actually were negotiating these things and parsing the language. But then on top of not knowing about high money projects, big money projects, and how it works, the life cycle associated with it, on top of it, I think people are making the mistake of trying to figure out what they think business is like, right? And then projecting it onto the public sector or the government sector. So it's like a double whammy of being wrong, right? So, you get a lot of these guys like, government is wasteful. Everything to them is a golden toilet seat. When in fact, I mean, I'm not going to deny the wastes a lot of money because there are a lot of stupid people that work there. That said, the procurement process, the sign-off process, number of stakeholders, all of that is far and away larger in every respect than a private sector contract or a project.
Absolutely, and it is prohibitive in most cases, and the punitive clauses kick in at way later dates than they would in a private sector contract. All that crap drove me crazy. Chris is on fire tonight, so he's got another super chat question, which is: do you think the housing market prices will go down? Even the interest rates, even when they drop, they are dropped. So, what's the market in 10 months? Holy shit! I would really need to. I'd really need to pull one out of my ass.
I think the market's going to go full Cernovich in 10 months, right?
Yeah. I assume you're talking about the housing market, which is, I think right now, if we do one of these, these sharp V curve, which isn't even really a curve, which, I've never heard of a bear market recovery in 3 days or whatever, 4 days of trading. So, I mean, who am I to argue that, the housing demand will drop because of the initial cost of unemployment rising and things like that. What I see right now are historically low interest rates, opportunities for buyers to quite literally save themselves tens, 20, $30,000, depending on the house price they're looking at. And so sky's the limit, as the president said, if we can get over the hump. Now, granted, it's uh, it's a matter of your own financial situation. So I think we got to have a lot of uncertainty in the markets, housing markets, other markets for the foreseeable future. Once that settles out, I think obviously the interest rates are not going to be put back into play as quickly as they were at the beginning of this bull market under Trump, or the continuation of the bull market under Trump. So I think to your question, Chris, if you're looking at buying a house and you already saved up the money for the down payment, you probably couldn't pick a better time to go ahead and nab that house, because I've seen the prices coming down, even in the most in demand areas out here like Hershey. So if you got the cash on hand, you know what they say. I mean, cash is king when there's blood in the streets, and the bullies will buy, and everybody else will hide under the mattresses. And you put $2 bills under your mattress. Believe me, they're not going to copulate and procreate and produce anything. You got to put your money into action. So if you do have cash on hand, COH we call it, now's the time. And that goes for businesses. That goes for of course, traders that give advice to certain people that keep a COH for this type of thing, or have commodities they're ready to cash in on to go after some other stocks. Uh, Hell, if you would have, remember we talked about Boeing about a week and a half ago, if you would have went into Boeing, you'd be doing real well right now. And I don't see that stock precipitously coming down anytime soon with what we're putting into the bill. Perturbed Sun's asking gut feeling on how this affects Trump in 2020. Far too early to tell. Let me put it in a medical terms here, in a really bad, inappropriate medical metaphor, which I'm always good for. You've come to my office. I'm your doctor, and there's a lump, and it's suspicious to me. I don't like it. Um, I'm going to take it out, and we'll find out, what kind of a deal you got going on over there. It could be a harmless, benign thing, or it could be something malignant. That's where we're at in this phase right now. I haven't even taken out the lump yet to get a biopsy on it. So that's how far away the terminology that could be applied to the situation politically would be up in the air. Although I'm enjoying some of the polling that I'm seeing as far as the efforts that Trump is leading, doing pretty well. And people are just, the numbers have reversed in a lot of ways, where they're starting to trust Trump more in a crisis. At the same time, they are at a record high anxiety about the economy, which is a total, things are whiplashing faster than we can count. And this is all within a 2-week period. So additionally, Perturbed Sun is asking for the bonus discounted rate, $199. Can POTUS EO manufacturing back for national security? No. Yeah, to a certain extent. There's certain things he can do, but no. Yeah, you can't make a wave of the pen and force people, to whatever, pick up and screw their shareholders over that are saving money by being over in Ireland or China or wherever. So we're working on that. We're working on making. We got to incentivize it. And in order to incentivize it, there's not much you can do within the tax system without getting it codified by Congress, which is a disappointment, because Congress is a disappointment. Debbie Tyler, thank you for the $15 super chat question, which is, what upset me more than anything was the petty attack on Trump on his companies. If the hotel industry receives help, and I don't know if they do, they probably will. Yes. Why is he excluded? Their hatred knows no bounds. Yeah, it's just really odd, because they're not really so much punishing Trump. He's still going to have the properties. He still has the asset, the collateral of the property. What they're doing is essentially screwing over the employees at work for that particular resort that Trump would own. So, and Trump, as you know,
Wait
and
a
I know,
second, Adam. You mean Trump's the properties and the company that Trump now is no longer involved with?
Yeah, well, Trump is still the name of the family operation, but yeah, of
So
course he's not. He's
has
not
nothing
involved
to
in it
do
all.
with the president.
Nothing to do with him at all. No, it doesn't. He doesn't talk about this with Don or Eric, but I will say that they're screwing, and we've seen it at the Trump resorts that we've been to, and they do hire almost exclusively, people from other countries, and they wear their proudly the name tag of the country of where they originate from. You're screwing over your own people, Democrats. You're screwing over your
I
own
wonder if Nancy
law enforcement.
Pelosi's various restaurants in California will also be getting
I
some help.
wonder. Good question.
They got a lot of illegals in those things too, and I hear the pizza is terrible. But try to get a good slice of pizza in California anyway. Oh, yeah. Good luck.
I always was surprised that chain took off, that California pizza chain. I'm like,
Terrible.
really? What's going on here? You don't just throw a bunch of shit on top of
Let me tell you. I mean, I'm prejudiced against them because my favorite Chinese restaurant of all time, which
mhm.
closed around 1994, was replaced by a stupid California pizza kitchen.
Oh boy.
And I actually had one because I went to the restaurant and it was no longer my restaurant. I was pissed, and it was bad. It was like a California version of Pizzeria Uno. It was like the kind of pizza you get at an airport. One of like they have the fancy
Yeah.
pizzeria restaurants, like a sports bar pizzeria. It was
Yeah,
awful.
you're paying $22 for shit pizza
Right.
in the airport.
Where the dough is delivered by truck in the right amount, and then they use the some kind of metal thing to squeeze it in the right plate. Oh, it was bad. The best pizza in
But my
Chicago. No, it's not. Nice
my
try.
point is, in answering your question, Debbie, it is not surprising to us that the first questions asked were about the impacts to his hotels, and it's certainly not surprising to us that they were going to make sure that he was,
I mean, his ex hotel.
yeah, well, his family organization, that they would get screwed. So here, listen, all the more reason why Trump just wants to get rolling in the economy again. I mean, he doesn't want to lose a lot of money. Um, and every building or property that the Trump organization owns is at a different phase of viability at this point. I mean, we've got the Trump International in DC, which of course struggling and has been struggling for quite some time. That's a different thing than maybe the resort down in Miami, which I'm pretty sure probably paid off or close to paid off or something like that. So certainly Mar-a-Lago's paid off, but that's a much smaller.
Yeah.
Uh,
That
yeah,
golf one, the Doral, is making the
Doral,
dough.
yeah,
It's minting money because that's
yeah.
a
They
very
have some problems.
desirable
They
golf
fixed it.
club.
I know that it must be successful because of whenever they have a problem there, they just like go over the top to fix everything that's going on down there. And I'm not really worried about the political ramifications of this. It's almost like the press is just trying to find something. What disturbed me and why we're on tonight? Well, the DC one is just a massive investment. The DC is struggling because the capital investment that took to
Right.
get that thing up and running. I mean, if you've seen the building when it was like, an old uh, post office building, just gutted the whole damn thing. I mean, you can imagine how much that costs to renovate. That's why, Jen. So, what the real reason I'm not on here just to talk about things that we always talk about. We're talking about what's in the bill, what's not in the bill. What's in the bill essentially is going to be a placeholder until the time of June, where we assume that these things are going to pass through. The problem, it's going to take a while. As I open up a White Claw here that my lovely wife brought home as a treat for me today. It is therapeutic treatment for cabin fever. And of course, I'm trying to get outside as much when we have sunshine like today as possible. But some days, like the rain this weekend, you probably want to have some White Claw on hand because the state liquor store system is closed. So the Dixie juice is not available until further time. So White Claw it is. So anyway, um, people who have been out of work now for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, they're not going to get these direct deposits for another 3 weeks, and they're going to be using your IRS information. So whatever bank account you have that you would get a refund from or pay your taxes from in the last 2 calendar years, that's the one they're going to use. So if you don't have that information on hand, haven't had a refund, haven't paid into just whatever, filed your taxes without any of that bank information attached to it, then they use the Social Security system to locate you, and they send you a check, and that is expected to take 4 to 5 weeks once the bill is signed by the president. So there's that acknowledgement that sending the $1,200 or $3,400 for a family of 4, whatever, wasn't going to cut it in entirety, because there's people that were going to go through easily, in some cases, up to 2 months. It's just without money before this stuff even gets there. And they're certainly going to have trouble back paying a lot of bills on that. I answered that question, John, for you 5 minutes ago, and you're lucky because it wasn't highlighted. So I don't know why I answered it. But yet there's no $300 million for immigrants and refugees. For God's sakes, you don't think Breitbart would be like throwing feces at the walls right now? There's no $300 million for immigrants in here. I don't even know where that came from, and I answered that 5 minutes ago in writing. So anyway, you've got all that rumor stuff out there, all that stuff out there that was put out about Pelosi and her magical bill. It's just taken root, and you have some of these people that are not quite as intelligent as you'd like them to be, and they're saying that this is just a massive pork bill, and that this is like this and that. There's $300 million in there for legal immigrants, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not true. There's universal vote by mail for this election. Well, that's not in there at all, not even close. What were the Green New Deal ones? Oh, the airline industry has to tell you the greenhouse emissions from every flight. They need to do this and that and the other thing, and whatever. It's all bullshit. It never made it in there. It never made, none of it made it in there. I don't know how many times I got to say this. So what's the next thing people do? They start saying, well, it's pork. Look, Kennedy Center is getting $25 million. And, oh, Congress is getting a raise. What the hell? No, that's not even possible. I mean, it's $25 million. And that's what started our conversation here, where we kind of got off into the weeds about government versus private sector contract. But let me tell you what. Everybody in the situation who was trying to negotiate this deal that was in Washington while other people weren't saw how antiquated everything is in the Capitol. I mean, there is no telework capability at all. The phones are probably 20 years old. It's probably impossible to forward a phone to a secretary who's at home so they don't have to show up to work and they can answer it from home. Certainly telework was light years away. And as Glenn was basically alluding to, 25 million. Even in a 4-month period, to get Congress up and running on a telework possibility in case things get worse is nothing. Matter of fact, it's pathetic and it's offensive. You can't get anything done for 25 million. And that's what that money is for. To think that Congress is giving themselves a pay, what do you think? In an election year, you think Congress is giving themselves a pay raise of $25 million. You must be insane to believe that. You absolutely have to be insane to believe that Congress would sneak 25 million into their own coffers for pay raises. It's absolutely bizarre to me that people would think like that. Our good friend George from the left coast, New York, California, Washington notwithstanding, I think we've hit the inflection point on the confirmed deaths. I'm going to say no, simply because we know the seeding cases that occurred in New York, Washington, California. We're now looking at some of that stuff in Florida as well. So those are fairly obvious. We saw Tucker was actually good tonight. I actually watched Tucker. If you saw what happened in New York and the way they were treating this thing in February, and just literally having people out in the streets and forcing them through coercion to participate in these Lunar New Year parades with people that just returned from the Wuhan province. They're all over the streets. The actual public health administrator in the city of New York, telling them go out with as big a crowd as you possibly can.
Amazing.
The incident rates in New York Yeah, exactly. Your public health administrator is telling people, do whatever you want, be in as big as crowd as you want, and don't miss the parade, which was, of course, the Chinese New Year parade. I mean, so we see clearly why the numbers have spiked. So what's happening now is a battle of narratives. So if you watch one network, they're telling you these secret nurses are videoing for the New York Times that there's no ventilators here, people are dying. Listen, the doctors are pissed because in some cases they're not being properly outfitted with their personal protective equipment. They know they're at risk. They get really angry that they might bring this home to their family, if they can even find time to go home to their family. They take that out on the closest person possible in private. And then in public, they have to hit the closest non collateral damage politician. And in New York City, that's Donald Trump. So we know that de Blasio is a miserable failure. We know that in March 11th, de Blasio was still telling people, go out to restaurants, go see a play, do what you were going to do, regular lifestyle. March 11th, for God's sakes, I mean, well into a month of this whole thing. And then literally a week later saying that the government hasn't done enough, federal government has done enough for New York City, and we should declare martial law across the country and nationalize industries. I mean, how do you go from, go out, have dinner, go to a movie theater, and then a week later, nope, lock down the entire country. This is too risky. So New York City is just an absolute nightmare, and I, I I don't think the situation on the ground is bad at all because I know the CDC is monitoring all these hospitals in the New York area, and they're pulling fire alarms when necessary, putting red flags up, chain of command as necessary. The federal government is deliberately tethering every piece of assistance in there because they know if they give too much at one time, they're making themselves vulnerable, and it's not actually doing anything positive for the city's hospital system. So is there anything more we could do to get them the equipment that we're getting them? No. I mean, we're absolutely producing this stuff 24/7. Private sector's already been doing what they're doing. But it to me, George, I don't understand. I understand how things got bad in Milan, and I understand how that turned into things getting bad in Rome as far as Italy is concerned. I understand how things started in Madrid and ended up in Barcelona, in Spain and got bad. But what I don't understand is this mentality like I have in PA, barely, like whatever, 160 miles between me and some of these things going on in New York City. What makes me think it's just you got to jump over? It's going to jump over me and just it's going to go to Ohio or something, or it's not going to jump at all, and none of that stuff is going to happen. So I think Dr. Birx is one of the biggest superstars to come out of the behind the scenes non-politician stuff that happens in America every now and then. I've never seen anybody with the ability to communicate and get everything calmed down and all that other stuff. But her decision to talk about the disparity of the models and what we're actually seeing as far as mortality was probably not timed very well today, because we've got this one situation where New York is just like a freaking Roman candle. New York City right now is a Roman candle. It is just like we're just beginning and in this process. So federal government knows that. If the federal government thought we were anywhere near the peak infection rate and hospitalization rate in New York, that ship would already be there. We wouldn't be casting it away to get there by Monday on Saturday. There would be 10,000 ventilators already in place as opposed to 4,000 and maybe 2,000 distributed directly and 2,000 more in a warehouse. The federal government has eyes and ears everywhere. The CDC has eyes and ears everywhere. They know what's going on. They're watching, waiting, and addressing as needed. It's the media that's driving this narrative that the federal government's not doing enough, that New York is basically collapsing, but the actual CDC people on the ground are saying that's not true at all. So listen, here's an anecdotal story I can share with you real quickly. So we have 16 cases, 16 in Dauphin County, which is the seat, the state capital. Harrisburg's a fairly decent sized city. We have 16 cases in Dauphin County, which is, 300 and some down in Philly or whatever. we haven't. I don't think we've had a fatality yet or anything like that. But I don't even think we really. I think we hospitalized maybe 4 or 5, and I'm already hearing from people who work at the Hershey Med Center that they're using one ventilator for 4 people. Is that because we're overrun with cases? No, it's out of an abundance of caution. It's we don't know how long those people are going to be on ventilators, but we now know the capability of the ventilators to put these people in non-COVID-19 scenarios onto one ventilator and 4 people. So what we're doing in Pennsylvania, and it's not a government decision, it's a hospital system administrator decision, that we're going to have certain sections of the hospital closed off for non-COVID-19 patients. And then we have certain sections of hospitals that are going to be meant to address until they get overrun, if that happens. But we're already starting this process. We're not going to wait for the government to jump and dump a bunch of thousands of respirators, because we're not like New York. I mean, New York is just like, leave us alone. The federal government is the enemy when a Republican's in office until the shit hits the fan, and then we want everything and we want it now. I mean, the mentality of the mayor's office is just, to me, stunning. Cuomo can at least play the game a little bit, but even he shows his true colors every now and then. And I think it's embarrassing. And I think you could not have told me that Gavin Newsom would be performing in a more professional and comprehensive way to this crisis than Cuomo, and he actually is. To be honest with you, I would be shocked, but that's actually the truth. Cuomo is using the body count to his advantage. He is talking about this bill as if it is not a substantial enough amount of money to help New York at all, when in reality, what he's looking for is a bailout. Same thing in Cook County with Chicago. What they want out of these bills is money to bail themselves out of 3-4 years of just horrible freaking decisions. And that's not what this bill is. And it's never going to be that way as long as Mitch is in control of the Senate and the president's in the White House. So sorry, Cuomo, this money is not to bail out your entire failed systems where you're just giving medical care at all times at free cost to illegal aliens. We're not here to bail you out for any of that shit. We're here to get you what you need when you need it. And I guarantee you the CDC's on the ground monitoring the situation. So stop pulling your own fire alarms. It's not going to work. President's not going to fall for it. He knows everything that's going on. So end of rant on your hometown.
What's weird is that the dollar amount that Cuomo was looking for is exactly the underage of his own budget problems. I mean,
Isn't that funny?
he didn't even
That's the budget hole,
try.
huh?
Like rule
Yeah.
number one when trying to hose management, if you
Mhm.
fucked up, let's say $10 million, you don't ask for $10 million. You ask for like 6, maybe 6.5, with the hope that you can go back. Maybe you can revise another mill, and then you can tighten your belt and you can make it to the finish line. But this guy doesn't have any finesse at all. It's like, dude, you said it, man. His own poor decisions that were made over the last 5 years. Now he's thinking, "Oh, this is my get out of jail free moment. I can milk this thing for $6 billion. So let's just ask him for $6 billion, because that's what I lost over the last, how many years was it now? 10 years he's destroyed himself? 7 years?
It's a delicate dance now for the president. I mean, if you let New York suffer a little bit, it's going to make national news. If it bleeds, it leads. So you don't want to let this thing get too far out of control. But if I'm the president and it looks like this is what he's doing, I'm showing the cracks in the leadership at the local and city and state level. And I'm literally sending in the cavalry when things start to pile over, and I will bail you out. And hospitalization rates will plummet, and we'll have 1,000 people on a naval ship with ventilators at the ready, and the federal government will be the hero. So, no, we're not going to bail out your budgetary problems. You might want to stop protecting illegal aliens, and you might want to stop literally treating gunshot wounds from illegals and not reporting to the police, which is against the law, and it's what you do all the time. And then what you do is you bill the taxpayers of New York in one form or another for treating the gunshot victim that is an illegal alien who's selling drugs in your city or something else. So enough of those bad decisions over enough years is going to compound itself into a situation like this. Don't come crawling on your knees to the federal government that you've been telling to butt out of your fucking state and city for the last 3 years. How many times have they said it, Glenn?
Many.
Stay out. We don't want anything to do with you, except for your grants that you're trying to hold back from us because we're a sanctuary city in New York. I mean, how many times have we heard de Blasio tell Trump, go pound sand? You listen, and then you come crawling on your knees. I don't want to see anybody die. I mean, the numbers are staggering. However, you are talking about people that might have died regardless of whether or not they contracted this illness, because that's how precarious their health was at the time anyway. I'm concerned that the CDC is not confirming each case is COVID-19 and not influenza after death. I want
Listen,
swabs in
we've
noses
we've
from every
already
dead person.
we crossed that Rubicon 20 years ago. All of the stats that you're getting from the New York Times, Washington Post, um, through the CDC and other places are cooked when it comes
Well,
to
I believe the testing numbers are good, but what I'm worried about is the mortality numbers. Like, I'm talking about straight up fatalities,
this
because
is what I'm talking about.
you're telling me this doesn't make sense to me. All right, and I believe that this thing is deadly serious. I believe that since what happened in Italy, and I believe that I had concern levels that we were going to have major problems here, but not to the extent of the bullshit UK study of 2.2 million dead Americans. I never thought that would be possible, but literally, I always thought that there was something amiss here, because in America, we're testing at an increased rate nobody else in the world is doing. So we're learning more about the disease
This
than
is good. I
anybody.
think this process is going to be an eye opener for you,
It is already
honestly.
for me. It
Because
is already for
listen,
me, because
listen to me. Yeah.
what I learned today from Dr. Birx is that 86% of people with flu-like symptoms who have been tested have tested negative. So what that tells me is that our flu season is particularly active at this stage for some reason. It's a little late in the game going into April. Just I guess it's not impossible, but you know what it is, Glenn? You know why influenza is a seasonal thing. It's because people are indoors in the winter more, and they end up you know at work or at home. They don't go outside as much, and they end up getting sick from each other, and they spread it around. That's how things happen. So what's happening is we're quarantining everybody, not quarantining, but we're putting them into shelter in place or whatever type of form of whatever state lockdown version. You got a lot of people at home, and what they're doing is they're getting the flu, and they're spreading it in a house like you would normally do with the flu. But now you have to have a symptom to get tested. Keep that in mind. And I've said that all along. Don't just run to your doctor out of nowhere and say, I want to get tested, because you're going to throw the whole goddamn thing off. One, we don't have enough test kits for that shit. And two, you're going to screw up the control data that we need in order to, extrapolate scientific data that we can make decisions off of. So what require, and the CDC is obviously smart. The NIH knows this stuff. You got to go through the system. You've got to get a doctor to issue basically a prescription to get the test. Now, what we're learning is that this number is skyrocketing of confirmed cases when we're doing the testing. Yeah, that's true. But you forget how many people we're testing. We're testing over 500,000. I think we're probably over 600,000 total tests. And 86% of those people showing symptoms did not have COVID-19 or even coronavirus. So you've got to ask yourself, at that rate, the confusion can go all the way to the deathbed. And there's a lot of people that die at home, dying in the nursing homes. Is the government testing to make sure that it was actually the coronavirus and not the A or B strain of the flu that killed these people? And the side effect of all this is the flu should be decreasing. I mean, if we're listening to everybody like Dr. Fauci tell us social distancing, staying at home, washing your hands, all this blah, 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 he said that this will help mitigate future flu season. Well, if that's the case, then why the fuck, pardon my language, are we seeing these spikes in flu cases? It's because everybody's sheltered in place. And in some cases, influenza is influenza. A coronavirus is a coronavirus. You know, this one may be particularly more infectious, but what we're seeing now is the mortality rate here, and the positive cases keep going up, and the mortality rate is lagging far behind. In Italy and Spain and China, and even South Korea, we're starting to drop below them because we're testing more. So I've got to say, I believe this is deadly. I believe that New York City is under threat to be potentially overwrought, if not overrun. But as far as the national terms here, as far as everything else, I think we need to have, and there are a bunch of things in this bill, importantly, that'll force the Department of Health and it'll force the federal government to investigate everything, and the CDC and all the health subsidiary agencies must report, almost like a 9/11 report on this. Find out what went wrong, what went right. I can tell you one thing: this is America, and when you put forth a crisis like this, the innovation goes like insane. I mean, it's almost like a gold rush, and we've been through a little bit of this stuff in the past, but particularly in your sector, you understand sometimes if it's something we need on a software end, everybody's racing to get it, patent it, and own it. If there's a opening somewhere in a market of need, we last saw that with the people when people started hacking and we started to get data breaches, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to be the one that could solve your PC safety issues, and a lot of people made a lot of money doing bullshit, and in some cases they still are. This is in the biotech industry and the pharma industry and in the business manufacturing industry. It's busting with new age technology ideas, guys looking to get rich and patent something that's going to work. Obi in here mentioned earlier about now they can do the 3D print off of the quad split for the ventilators, so that you can do 4-on-1. These 3D printing for surgical mask or shields. All kinds of stuff like this is occurring, and I believe we're going to have the quickest vaccine that you've ever seen put into play, and we're front loading the amount. I mean, Fauci said it today that these companies are taking an enormous risk looking for the vaccine that's going to work, and when they get to phase 2, they're not going to have any produced. So what the hell good is it going to do? We need this by November before the next season kicks around, in case this is in fact a seasonal flu, which I believe it is. So he said that the government at that point would be crazy not to invest hundreds of $1 million, basically an insurance policy for the pharma companies to get this thing done. I'm okay with that. We're already spending $2 trillion on unemployment, essentially. And I think that this is going to change our healthcare system fundamentally. I think it's going to change our social behavior fundamentally, at least for a while. I think it's going to change the workforce mentality on who has to be there every day, and is it cheaper and sometimes more efficient to look into this telework situation? I think there's all kinds of stuff. Never mind the fact that people are learning that the government is a bumbling, stumbling giant, and you don't want it to do everything for you. You just want it to be the last stop when you need something, and so people are learning valuable lessons every day. Every day. Shireen is saying, let's not forget Italy, Spain, possibly Singapore are using Chinese tests that only report 30% of the coronavirus. Yes, our tests are not only the best in the world, but they're moving from the invasive nasal exploration, which the test administered over the first 7 days was so invasive that it elicited responses, physical responses from the patients, coughing, sneezing, which meant you had to change your protective gear each time you did a test at a drive-through site, walk through a hospital, whatever. Now we're doing simple swabs. The patients can do their own nasal frontal swabs, and then it gets processed, and nobody has to change their PPE. And frankly, we'll have at-home testing going on, I think, by the end of April. That'll be commonplace. And we're doing antibody testing. So if you want good news, I can keep giving good news. The antibody testing is a way to really get some plasma out there to the near-death patients that might kickstart their immune system with antibodies and keep somebody alive. The third bit of good news on this front is the fact that the genome studies on this virus is that it's extremely stable. So the mutational qualities there at this point are not shaky, which means once we get a vaccine that we know is work with empirical scientific data and we put it into play, it's going to knock this thing out. And we're all going to be vaccinated for a couple of years, and this thing's going to die out until the next time some Chinaman eats a bat and wipes his ass with a dead fish, and we have whatever we get. God knows how long. But I can tell you what, we're now the most prepared nation on the planet for the next pandemic, and we were the opposite of that before this. So Trump, he got a lot riding on getting this thing right, finding the right balance. And I think today he's starting to message better than he did yesterday, which is, you know what, we can't stay shut forever. He's giving the market the confidence. Once we put this bill through, the market will have a little bit of more confidence. Friday, my prediction is by Friday afternoon, there's going to be fear and loathing on the trading floors, and probably drop off again, but not to the tune of 6-7%. Not enough to drop us back down in the bear territory. All we need is stabilization now. So you want to get up and running in Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Montana, Idaho. Get the shale workers back up to work. Parts of Pennsylvania in the northern part, northwest. Get manufacturing back up and running. Our main problems right now are Cook County because of Chicago, Wayne County because of Detroit, certain parts of California, which really is kind of in the north. It's not even. I thought LA was going to take off like fire. It has not. And then, of course, we have the 5 boroughs, which are like bacon in a pizza oven right now. It's pretty nuts. But as long as Florida and Texas don't go like really south on us, I think we can contain Louisiana, and we can just put people back to work in a lot of these states. And if we can firewall this thing, and Pennsylvania so far we've been doing pretty well, and Ohio's been doing okay. If we can firewall this thing to New York, we're up and running again at Easter, like the president said, at least partially in some parts of the country. And then by mid-May, we're all back, not to the exact way we were before, but we're back on where we're not going to have 7-figure unemployment numbers coming in. Area 55 is asking, what will the fallout be for the many postponed state primaries? Almost none. Thank you for the super chat and the question. Very good question. I don't see any fallout. There is no political attention fixated on Bernie right now. None. He tried to make a little hay the other day about this whole $600 thing in the bill. Biden's got it wrapped up, and he's barely conscious. So, I mean, all of a sudden, what looked like the golden egg was laid for the Democrats in November. A broken economy, mass unemployment, a disease barely controlled. That narrative is starting to fade out within a period of 15 days. Now, it could cook up again. Don't get me started with this. The likelihood is it's 50-50 right now. But if he wrangles this at this point and we learn enough, and let me tell you this, I want to tell everybody this, that those people, those desperate, dying people in New York are American heroes simply for the fact of the data that they're going to yield. They're going to save lives all over this country. The sick people in New York right now that are dying, it's a tragedy. It'll exceed the number that died probably by 3 times on 9/11, at least 3 times. But those people, with each death or hard recovery that leaves long-term existing medical problems, they are teaching us how this works, how it doesn't work, and it will change how we treat it in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, and all those other places. So these deaths are not in vain. They're hard, they're painful. There'll be 2,000 probably by tomorrow morning, but they're not in vain. Everything that we learn will be put into motion and then give us a better chance moving forward into the end of April. In my mind, April is going to be like the lost month. There's going to be a lot of people in parts of the country that go back to school, go back to work in the middle of April, and there's going to be a lot that don't. But we got to do what we got to do. Contain, crush, figure the vaccine thing out, assume that this is seasonal. But I don't want this thing to become a conspiracy theory. I mean, we have people that we know that have lost neighbors, lost friends, had it themselves. It's a very real thing. I just, and I don't believe that we're inflating numbers for any other reason. I just want to know that if somebody dies, and if it's a complication related to pneumonia or anything in a nursing home, anywhere, Glenn, all I want, if we can test a living person, we sure as shit can test a dead person. And even if that person died of a heart attack, even if that person died of a gunshot wound, I don't understand why we would not test them, because we know we have a wild amount of asymptomatic people running around out there, or else this thing wouldn't be spreading like that. So my plea to the CDC is test everyone, dead or alive, so that we can figure out for real what we're talking about here. But from the numbers we've got so far in the Northeast with the testing that we've done, and in California, it's literally 86% of people with symptoms tested negative. So if they tested negative for that, chances are they probably tested positive for one of the flu strains. So that's just something to think about. Now, and here, one more point I want to make real quick. Listen, this blanket notion that everybody should be fucking let out like dogs out of a cage at one time is just sheer stupidity. It would be insane. I mean, if you look at what's happening in New York right now, as dumb as they behaved in early March and late February, think about had we taken no measures in New York City. Think about what the numbers we would be at right now in New York City. It would be unthinkable. I mean, it would be, I don't even know how to do that math. I mean, you've seen the streets, the footage. There's nobody around. There's nobody doing anything. I mean, for the most part, for the last week, they've been respecting each other's space like you wouldn't believe. And hopefully that's the other side of the curve. It's going to go down now. But think about the fact if the last 15 days we hadn't had this whole CDC guideline thing and all the New Yorkers just doing what they want. Well, then you'd really be at the beginning right here. And the same numbers would be happening right now. But you would only be right here on the curve instead of like maybe right here. So, this whole notion of this is a scam, everybody should have been working the whole time with no economy damage. If you want to damage your economy, let New Yorkers run around partying and eating and doing everything that they do 24/7, the city that never sleeps, with a bunch of dirty immigrants in there, throw them into the mix. That would have been an economic disaster, the likes of which we would have taken us off the map. So the fact that de Blasio woke up late and we had to fight like hell to get him to shut down schools, if everybody would have stayed in school in New York, everybody would have stayed going out to restaurants, bars, movies, theaters, people coming in, tourism everywhere, bringing in the germs from everywhere else. If that would have been going on over the last 15 days unabated, New York right now would quite literally be the scene of a disaster movie that you wouldn't believe unless it was like a movie. So say what you want about, people staying home and killing the economy, but tell you what, we have empirical data looking us right in the eye right now that these people are dying in New York. They're dying. I don't care if they're 75 and they have one lung, they're dying. They're getting hospitalized. So add that number by 20, 30, 40, or 50. That's how many you would have right now had they not cut back on social distance, doing normal things, keeping people away from, whatever that could cause large groups and people from visiting New York, that type of thing. So total intellectual argument to me when you have the people saying that we destroyed our economy for no reason and blah, blah, blah. Your economy wasn't destroyed because some restaurant in Milwaukee closed down, people. Your economy wasn't destroyed because Johnson and Johnson shut down a swab factory, or then it wouldn't shut down swab right now, but shut down a tampon factory somewhere, wherever the hell else they make. Your economy was collectively shut down, put into lockdown, driven by the GDP of New York and California. If we had 4 feet of snow drop 3 consecutive days in the state of New York in a winter, at the same time California had top to bottom wildfires, as if they've been known to have, if that happened at the same time, we would have almost the same level of economic damage that we do right now. You know why? Because those puppies, those bookend burning engines make America go. That's the tech valley on the left. That's everything else, finances and manufacturing and everything, import export on the New York side. So please spare me the bullshit. Spare me that, because nobody's eating a lobster roll in Maine right now is the reason your 401k went in the toilet. Wake the fuck up. Pardon the rant. Yeah, the citizen pundit, great question. Major worry for you, and a lot of the questions I see parroted by the ever tiresome Harris Faulkner during the day. Uh, the worry is for a lot of people, future pandemics, the flu, potentially the B strain that they don't really have control over yet, vaccine wise. More shutdowns, who knows? My answer to that is we are so less likely to deal with this shit ever again because of what we're doing right now. I mean, we are just less likely to deal with it. Yeah, the flu might be spiking right now because of our shelter in place orders that are going on. That's not going to happen next year. I mean, we're going to have vaccines. And if something does change and mutate and comes out of China again, guess what? We're not going to stop making masks until we stockpile like 50 million of them. We're not going to stop making emergency ventilators. We're going to have like a million in a warehouse somewhere because the federal government is the king of being caught with its pants down and then overcompensating at the end so that they have stuff that they'll probably never use again. And then that's the cycle of how government works. But to answer your question, you should be less concerned about the next flu or the next mutational issue that we get because we're less likely to be affected by a pandemic because of everything we're doing right now. It's a war. And once you win that war, to the victor goes the spoils, and to us it'll be the data, the vaccine, the supplies, all of it, and the innovation, by the way, which is occurring in America. The rest of the world is just trying to figure out how the hell not to die. In America, we have certain sectors that are exploding with innovation, and they will be patented and sold around the world. So listen, we're going to make money off this thing in the long run. Just you got to keep that in mind. Deborah's asking, are we going to do this next flu season? I just answered that, I think. Maybe you were typing while I answered it because thousands died in New York last year. I think, one, you're being a little bit naive thinking that it's only going to be New York that gets into the thousands. They're already almost 2,000, and it's just starting because where we were from Italy and, Spain, we can tell where we're at a little bit. But there's going to end up being thousands in California, obviously thousands in New York, maybe thousands in Pennsylvania, but all in all, we're not talking something that's never happened in a bad flu season. I mean, I think the worst flu season was like maybe 70,000 dead. I think we could see 70,000 dead nationwide over the next 3 months, but because we're fixated on it, we're not treating it like a bad flu season. But in a sense, the coronavirus is just a really infectious flu. It's not. I mean, what we're seeing now with the gap currently with the mortality rate versus the positive tests, we're just seeing that this is a very infectious, smart flu, and if you are susceptible, you're going to get real sick, and that's going to happen whether or not you get another strain of the flu as well. This idea that we'll be shutting down every year, it's just so strange to me. I mean, what do you think we're doing? What do you think we're doing all this stuff for right now? We're trying not to get freaking run over by a bus so that we can learn everything about it, see it coming from miles away next time, and not have to deal with it. So I don't get this. We're not going to do that. Just I'm not going to play these games with people that they're like, okay, yeah, well, a couple thousand people died in New York. Who gives a shit? I can tell you who gives a shit. Trump's political fucking advisors give a shit. Because each one of those deaths, each one of those circumstances, each one person that dies because they couldn't access a ventilator is probably 100,000 votes lost by Donald Trump. So if you care about nothing else, care about that. Yes, he will be blamed. So get your shit together, people. Stop acting like Q followers. Start thinking of more things at once. Okay, my good friend here who is in that area, Ann Kelly, is saying the DOD sent out a letter. Yeah, I did read that letter. The military sent out a letter to all the people that were retired and asked them if they were interested in coming back in some capacity to address this crisis. And in some cases, they would probably assist them in reattaining license certifications. And I believe I heard from my cousin that they will waive some of those. The federal government is interested in waiving some of the people that were certified and retired in military and otherwise. So yeah, I did see that. That letter did go out officially to retired military personnel. Kathy, the House vote is supposed to work like a voice vote, like we did for previous spending bills that everybody was on the same page with. But it just takes one person like Justin Amash, who has said that he will not allow that to screw it up and force a roll call vote. And we just don't know how many people want to go back to Washington. And frankly, I don't think it's a good idea to bring him back. And so to get away from any quorum issues, to get away from any drama, it should just be a voice vote and be done with it. And if there's no objection, then that's the way it'll be done. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll be done tomorrow in the evening, and then on the president's desk for signature on Friday. Walt, I have no idea. Now I know we're sharing information, but I'm with other countries, but I'm not sure about the cities, countries who went full lockdown and those didn't. I know that Italy is regretting waiting so long, not thinking this was a northern regional issue, and then seeing it just explode all over the country. And they really are at the premier, believe it or not, of healthcare systems over there. They just got whacked, overrun. So their curve is going down because they did lock down. Had they not locked down, God knows, I just don't know. Yeah, Turbine's always looking for blood. Turbine's always looking for that pound of flesh. I always like that about him. Turbine, your favorite senator right now should be Tom Cotton from Arkansas, because Tom Cotton said there will be a reckoning with China and they will pay for this. So if you're looking for some, of that particular type of talk, you want to probably follow Senator Tom Cotton. He's looking to take a pound of flesh off China. Yeah, there's this notion that we could have this overwhelming triage situation. I just don't see it as a. I mean, certainly New York City, there's a possibility. I think LA, there could be a possibility. I think maybe if something went crazy in Detroit or Chicago, but in America overall, I just don't see where we're going to be in a situation heading into the warm weather, where we're going to have combat vets required, retired combat medics to come in and triage in a tent somewhere. That's me and looking like Trump does, and through the rose-colored glasses a little bit. John, I do not have any comments. I have listened to the footage of the woman claiming to be assaulted by Biden, but I really think that politically, in the absence of leaving a spot of your DNA on a blue dress, I just think politically these accusations are just really hard to get legs. So I haven't paid a lot of attention to it to this point. You get that little Ronan Farrow involved, and maybe people will start taking it seriously. No, as I mentioned, in LA, there's almost no infections. I think we have like a couple hundred cases in LA. It's certainly more prevalent in the north, but I think there's only been a couple hundred fatalities statewide in California. So I don't think even the news is attempting to paint LA as a problem area at this point. Yeah, we've seen a lot of filming from the news on the New York City hospitals. And if you think they're ghost towns, that's because they're isolating patients who do not have COVID, and they're moving them to different parts of the hospital or other buildings. So what we're doing right now is just anyone with a normal heart, cancer, whatever issue is not going to be seen in those hospitals. They're going to go to other facilities to be cared for. And if you see a hospital that looks like there's nothing much going on in it, because most of those patients are in the ICU, and you will not be filming there. Okay. So don't believe the YouTubers who are telling you this is all a scam. All right. We're not making up dead New Yorkers. I mean, this is just the kind of stuff we heard in 9/11. Plane didn't crash into the Pentagon. We did this. Oh, it was the World Trade Centers were brought down by, implosions by us. I mean, anytime there's an American event of a size and consequence, we hear every nutbird come out and just start tweeting, literally tweeting, tweet, and tweeting strange stories. Simply not true. I don't think your pastor is going to open up a church if the governor's ordered that not to happen. And I think it would be pretty ill-advised to do so, because he will likely be detained, and they quite possibly could threaten his tax-exempt status. So you might not be doing a whole lot of good for your pastor if you did that. I can go back to the bill if you want. I think I already said everything that wasn't in it. If you want to know what's in it, it's essentially a series of preparedness. There's a lot of stuff we're going to be doing to prepare in the future, which is, we're in a lot of liability waivers, a lot of state by state waivers in place, a lot of authorities of discretion by the Secretary of Treasury to issue loans, certain conditions that if they're not met, the loans must be paid back. If they are met, with the employment maintained, that you don't have to pay them back. The whole thing is just, it's about trying to get money to actual employees, not people that don't work, and certainly not people that quit work before December 2019. So yeah, the bill is just honestly, I don't know why people are upset about it. I just think it's probably one of the cleanest bills that you're ever going to read, particularly particularly when it's talking about $2+ trillion. I mean, holy cow. Um, Nothing like the TARP bill. I mean, this is nothing like the financial crisis bill. This is just full of loans. These are not bailouts. These are loans, and in some cases, just basically shoring up unemployment insurance issues so that people don't have to worry about getting whatever their state allows them to get. 60% unemployment maybe for the first 4 weeks, and then it goes down to 30. All that shit. That stuff is waived by the federal government right now. They're picking up the tab and for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, or whatever. These are all sunsetted provisions. They all die with this administration. Nothing in this bill, 99% of this bill dies at the end of the year. 50, 60% of it dies by June. So those are called sunset provisions. So nothing to get all worked up about. Certainly going to add to our deficit, whatever, our debt problem. That I guess you can complain about. The other side of it is 880 page of Democrat giveaways. I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, if you want to call NPR and PBS a giveaway, yeah, I'm not thrilled with giving them 50 million or whatever, 25 million to Kennedy Center. But there's nothing else in there. There is nothing. There's nothing else there. So I really don't know. This is phase one, so you only get one check if you're alone. If you file jointly with your spouse, the IRS, you will receive a check for $2,400. If you have 2 children, you will receive a total of $3,400. And that's yours, and that doesn't need to be paid back, provided you didn't lie in order to acquire it. So still going to take you a month to get it, so hopefully you can hang on till then. Any legally married couple will be treated the same. An interesting question. I have no idea what NPR, and I think what it is they look at it as a way to get NPR and PBS some money, because in a time where they can say a national emergency, that someone has to have free access, so if they don't cable or whatever, that they can always turn on the TV and find out, if they've got a problem with a disease or a pandemic. So that's the excuse for that. The excuse for the Kennedy and the Museum Foundation, I just don't understand those two, but that's not a lot of money. I mean, frankly, that's not a lot of money. You can combine less than $100 million out of a $2 trillion bill. Well, why? No, you're not going to pay it back. The people that have to pay back are the employers who take the loan, citing the number of employees that they're covering, and then the government finds out that they did not retain those employees. They went back, started up a restaurant, and didn't bring back all the waiters. Then it kicks in the payback. You have to pay back the loan eventually. That's in there. Same thing with the larger companies over 500. Yeah, if you actually had 23 kids, the government will come looking for you. I can tell you that. Yeah, I wouldn't F around with this, because they know all your info. If you're not in the tax system, they're gonna want to know why you're not in the tax system, and you're gonna have to prove to them that you're at home taking care of a COVID-19 patient or kids that are out of school and there's nobody else to care for them, and you can't get a job because you're watching their kids. That those are acceptable to the government, and that's happening to a lot of people. So, but frankly, you're not going to be able to lie your way into this. If your employer has kept you fully paid during this time, you will not receive any money. And I don't think anybody can argue with that. Company loans, soft nationalizing? No, I think that's the European in you kind of coming out there, Shireen. It's not. I mean, as long as it's a loan, I really don't. I guess you could call it soft nationalizing in some way because we're bailing out certain industries. The hotel will receive a great portion of this. The airlines, in some cases, will own stock in the airlines that they can't pay back. So they'll pay it back to the American people through stock. So that's not really nationalizing. It's kind of like a weird hybrid capitalization model. But no, there's no European business going on here, Shireen. Don't worry about that. That, to my understanding, and is that the loan will be forgiven if the business owner does not lay anybody off after they start back up their business. So, which is very generous of the government. Unfortunately, that's our tax dollars that are doing it, but that's the way it is. No, no. There are certain provisions in there for retirees, and it's based on your income and things of that nature. So all that stuff has to be negotiated probably with your broker if you are retired to see if you are eligible for something like that. But your benefits haven't been cut off. So you're not going to get paid because the market took a hit and your mutual funds didn't have enough money in there to pay yourself. So it's not going to work that way. But if you are retired and you say, I was going out to get a job because my mutual fund took a hit and I couldn't because my wife was sick with coronavirus, you might get a check. So that's the type of system that they have set up. I just frankly don't even know how they're going to get it because the IRS has been gutted. It just seems to me that this is a tall order for the government to try to get this thing out in 3 to 5 weeks. Just really, really, really tall order. And again, all the tax deferments are in the bill. 90 days, this and that, before if you owe money. It's basically a good time if you're a procrastinator on taxes and all that stuff, and you put off trying to file because you don't want to pay. No, the $1,200 check is the check. That's subject to, if you're just a single retired person and you get a pension, so your Social Security payment. No. So no, you'd have to claim to the government that you were trying to go back to work and you had a sick person you had to take care of or something like that. They're not just going to send you $1,200 when for all they know, you have a 401k that you converted that just like worth $1 million in mutual funds. So. And like I said, when it comes to Social Security, disability, all those type of things, those are all income related. So it's subject to how much you're making. So I don't know how much you're making. Anything over 75,000, they decrease the amount that goes to you for some reason. They're still sending checks out to people or families that have 100,000 because you know what? How do you do a bill? Because Manhattan, the average waiter can make $100,000 a year, and a waiter in Topeka is going to make 25. So this is a difficult situation. Definitely split the baby. Oversight committee is just, we just have to report. The Secretary of Treasury has to report to Congress about the spending, who got it, when, why, all that stuff. That happens with every type of spending bill or package like this. Now, you can get it if you're a small business owner, self-employed, 1099 contractor. There are ways if you want to go through the trouble. I don't know what Bonnie's official status is, but there are ways. I'm sure Bonnie would be eligible because basically, when you're in New York and they basically lock you inside or tell you can't do anything or all business stops, there are ways there. I personally doubt Glenn and I will be getting a check from the federal government given our respective circumstances. But realistically, there's going to be a website up for everybody who has questions about this stuff. And it's just going to be one big, probably colossal error, a hastily put together website where we're just going to shift Google over from their CDC website over into this frequently asked question site, which, as you recall, could turn into a disaster the way they tried to unveil the Obamacare, which was one of the worst disasters in IT history as far as government contracts were concerned. Yeah, Stormy, I do I use Kansas a lot for my austere references, so I apologize for that. I should pick another state. Idaho is good because that's where Smooch spends a lot of time. Smooch I can see Smooch getting a check. I think Smooch can finagle his way into a $1,200 check. Well, B, there's actual real estate related provisions in the bill. You have to read it in order to you can prove lost business to the government. Um, Again, this is something you got to talk to your tax preparer or your investment broker if you have one of the two. If not, you're going to be sitting online trying to answer questions through a website. The uh, the White House doesn't declare major disasters. The governors declare it, and the White House approves. So if Larry Hogan says, we've got a major disaster based on positive test cases or whatever, then the president's, of course, going to agree. I mean, they would be insane not to. Uh, that's a weird, well, it's a complicated question. Trump will get blamed, of course, for the deaths. Will he get credit for the combo he's pushing? No. He's not a doctor. It wasn't his idea. All he did was said it might work. That really, it doesn't matter how people get better or don't die. As long as they don't die, he's going to get credit for it. Doesn't matter what treatment it is. What Trump might take credit for it, knowing him. He'd probably stand up and say, "Yeah, I saved a bunch of lives with this hydroxychloroquine stuff." And I was like, "Oh, who knows with Trump?" But certainly, no, I don't see the Washington Post with a headline saying Trump saves hundreds of thousands of lives with, approval of CPAC and chloroquine. that that is not going to happen. Boyd, for anyone interested here on the YouTube side, has a toilet paper tip, which is always appreciated. I think we still got 5 rolls in our household, so we're pretty rich. by the toilet paper standard. Can POTUS win New York State? If the virus successfully kills 3.5 million Democrats, I think there's a chance that Trump could win New York State. Maybe, but then again, I think maybe even Republicans would be disappointed that 3.5 million New Yorkers died. And I'm, of course, being facetious. No, he has no shot in hell in New Jersey, Connecticut, or Massachusetts or New York. Appreciate that. John Roberts. I am indeed a Yankee. Sometimes I pick up a mildly Southern accent, depending on how pissed off I am. Twist Mint, good one. Lois Lerner volunteered to come back to administer the payouts. That's funny. And in times like these, I enjoy funny. Trump would not think that's funny, though. Why settle for one White Claw when you can have two? Our governor, by the way, is rethinking his our 8-week-old order about the state liquor store being closed. So we can hope that I might have to start lobbying. Actually, I might have to call up all my old friends that I used to work with at the House of Representatives and the Senate and say, tell Tom Wolf to open up the liquor stores, please, before things get ugly. Sharon with a simple but lovely message saying thank you. And we shoot that thank you right back at you. Yeah, we're not going to stay on very long. I think just wanted to talk about what not in the bill, which is basically everything Pelosi wanted, not in the bill. A raise for Congress? Not true. 300 million for illegal aliens and refugees? Not true. Anything with the Green New Deal? Not in there. So if you're going to complain, you've got to complain about the fact that it's going to add to the national debt. That's going to happen. And then, of course, you can complain about the Kennedy Center and the museums and PBS. But that's it. Out of $2.1 trillion. Not bad. Even I was surprised that they actually managed to do that. Mitch won. How many times has Mitch kicked Nancy's ass now? I mean, I've lost track. But each time Nancy tries to like stick her pathetic big fake tits into the Senate's business, Mitch donkey punches her right back to the other side of the complex, and it's kind of fun to watch. But since I just opened up a fresh White Claw, I am good for another 15 minutes as long as Glenn is fine with that. Yeah, nothing about voting. There's no voting stuff in there. No mail-in voting. None at all. Mail-in voting is not still in. I don't know who told you that. There's nothing in there about that. No, there's no universal mandate for same-day registration, voting, all that stuff. She put it in her bill, and we used every ounce of it to beat mercilessly her over the head with it Sunday and Monday. And wow, it just did not turn out well for them. And Mitch, again. Yeah, so Mitch is back in Kentucky now. I don't believe he's sick, but he certainly would be susceptible to hospitalization. He is a polio survivor. He's getting up there in his age, worked really hard, long hours. So yeah, we don't want that to happen. Yeah, AOC is just so dumb. I don't know how she can make an effective attack on Nancy. I mean, how are you going to attack Nancy? Nancy tried to, you know, hijack the process with all the stuff that they wanted. People are saying poor Glenn. Don't know why. No, Glenn does not have a fever. He has a new kick-ass camera, which gives him natural lighting, so he looks like one of these in-studio guests at Fox News that we don't have anymore. But no, I don't believe Glenn has a fever. He may have us on mute, but he did not have a fever. Looks like they just want proof of life from you, so I'll just stop talking.
What do they care? You want me to
Obviously.
smile? Put a $99 donation up. I might smile.
Mook wants to know if it's a Lookner part of the show. Oh, God. Jen, the one rapscallion he was referencing today that might cause trouble with a voice vote was Justin Amash, the independent representative from the great state of Michigan. The articles about Pelosi's voting stuff came out of the bill that she put out, the 1,400 page bill, which had nothing to do with the process, but everybody seems to want to be talking about it. There is no House bill. It's a Senate bill, and they're going to voice vote it tomorrow. In the House, we will retire Nancy. I don't think it's going to be her choice. Yeah, Thomas Massey has been a pain in the assy, pardon the joke. But you can see the actual bill anywhere. You just Google Senate bill or CARES Act, and you'll read 883 pages of joy. Or just punch it into the Twitter search, and many accounts have it. Yeah, I mean, of course, I can't say I'm happy that we're spending $2.18 trillion, but I can say that it's probably required. So I'm happy that we got it done as cleanly as we did. I'm happy that we screwed Pelosi over. That always makes me happy. Coronavirus killed off the downvoters. Yeah, we don't have any downvotes. That's wow. Yeah. Yeah, which yeah, I just looked at this. The New York Times surreptitiously videoed nurse video from whatever hospital in New York City is up to 1.4 million views already with this whole "people are dying" stuff. Just absolutely typical for New York Times. Just unbelievable. What does your gut tell you, Biden, or who does your gut Biden? Biden VP is like, oh man, I think they're going to wait to make sure he actually gets through the convention. I wouldn't agree to be his VP right now because they would make me do all the work for him, and who wants to take up that mantle right now? He is just hurting for certain. Not a good time for him. Yeah, Elmhurst Hospital. Yeah, yeah. Queens is the hardest hit, I believe. Could be wrong, but I think it's Queens and then New York City, Brooklyn, whatever. Okay, I think we're out of interested parties here. I think we're out of curious questions. We are running up our 2 hour limit on special plus productions. So that means 2 more days. You will have to go. You will have to suffer 2 more long days before you see us again on Saturday night. In conclusion, wrapping up, the bill was necessary. Trump is pleased, and Mitch is pleased. So I am pleased. The Department of Treasury has a lot of work to do. We'll see how it works out. Mnuchin put a lot on his plate. See how it works out. And then we'll also see how New York goes, because as New York goes, so will the media cycle. So just pray that the death rate stays low, and the positive case stays low, and the overall testing rate stays high. The higher the test rate, I think we can all agree is better for us, because it'll continue to show that disparity between people who have a sore throat or a fever. 86% of them not having COVID-19 is a pretty big deal. So we want to test more and more and more and more and more. And as I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I also want to test people that died of anything, just to make sure that we're not attributing. You know how they count up gun deaths. I mean, gun deaths, they lump in everything: accidentals, suicides, gang related. Like, if they just throw this massive number out, make it look like, there's all these gun deaths, but in reality, that's not exactly how things are here. As far as if your loved one is in a facility that is a nursing home or a medical rehabilitation, you are likely to see that extended, I'm told, until at minimum the end of April. They will limit visitors, or at least limit contact, direct contact, because they do not. These are the definite hot zones. They do not want people spreading this stuff. Nursing home infection rates now are just basically death sentences. And we're trying to limit that. I know it sucks, but that's how it is. And get an iPad and make the nurse set it up on a desk and do FaceTime or whatever you got to do to see grandma or mom or dad or whatever, because you ain't getting in there with your germs, I don't think, in the next 30 days. So, yeah, as we said, antibody test working. We want to do more of that. We got to get people there, though. You got to get the blood out of them. We got to identify who these people are. The genome is stable, which means the vaccine, once we figure out the right one, is going to be very effective for the next cycle. So there we go. That April just got laid off until at least April 20th. Yeah. So, yeah, April will be covered. April will not miss a dime of that paycheck once the bill is signed by the president. So, it sucks. And hopefully she's back at work massaging oil workers in Idaho. Um, yeah, she will get full paycheck and plus 600 at some point. So that's good news. Smooch will have a little extra cash in his pocket. Nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, normally you'd be we'd have a big giant pity party, but really, I think the pity here is that April now has to spend more time with Smooch, and that is, of course, a struggle for all sane people. So, of course, we love you all. Of course, we will see you on Saturday night, and of course, I'm signing off, and then Glenn will give his what I imagine will be truncated sign off tonight, and we'll see you Saturday night. Appreciated. Talk to you soon.
I want to thank Twist Mint and A. Hayes, 1930, for their donations through the MAGA Coalition web form at magacoalition.com/donate. Also to Maria, who used the same form. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And we will, for all the people who gave with the super chats as well, we appreciate that. And I will be back on Saturday.